It was exactly 7:02 a.m. when I was summoned to the boardroom. My name is Naomi Carter, 39 years old, Chief Operating Officer at Graham and Blake Real Estate Group, a company I'd given 12 years of my life. I arrived before the lights were even on, coffee still too hot to sip. Inside the boardroom, I found Victor Blake, the man whose last name sat on every door, standing by the window with his back turned to me, phone pressed to his ear. He didn't even look up when I entered. I stood there in the heavy silence as the minutes dragged. Eventually, he hung up and turned, eyes colder than the coffee I was still holding. Sit, he ordered, as if I worked for him personally and not for the company I had helped save 5 years ago when we were teetering on bankruptcy. You've been with us a long time, Naomi, he started, voice flat, rehearsed. But the board feels your direction no longer aligns with where we're taking the company. I blinked, unsure if I'd heard him right. Excuse me? He leaned on the table, sliding a thin envelope toward me, as though I was some intern being let go after a summer gig. We're restructuring. Effective immediately, your position is being dissolved. 12 years, late nights, holidays missed, deals brokered, clients retained, relationships built, and all I got was a generic envelope. And who's replacing me? I asked, forcing my voice to stay level. Victor shrugged. We'll announce it next week. The board's decision is final. I already knew. It didn't take a genius to figure it out. Nicole Patterson, the bright, loud, and overly ambitious strategic consultant Victor had hired 6 months ago, the woman I'd trained, the woman I'd warned him about when I caught her quietly meeting with our biggest client behind my back. I knew it then. She wasn't here to advise. She was here to replace me. I pushed the envelope back across the table. I don't want your severance. Victor narrowed his eyes. Take it. That's as much as you'll get from us. I stood, looking him dead in the eye. We'll see about that. I walked out without another word, past the assistant who couldn't meet my gaze, past the junior agents who whispered as I passed, past Nicole who stood near my office door, arms crossed, smiling like she had already won. But she hadn't, not yet, because what Victor didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had already spent the last 4 months preparing for this exact moment. I knew Victor's pattern. Bring in flashy consultants, pit them against leadership, then quietly push the veterans out once the new vision could be sold to the board. He did it to Mark, our former head of commercial leasing. He did it to Denise, the best finance director we ever had. And now it was my turn. But unlike them, I had an advantage. I had clients, not just their phone numbers or email addresses. I had their trust, their loyalty, their secrets. I knew which buildings were actually underwater on their loans. I knew which developments were overpromised and underfunded. I knew the vendors, the contractors, the city regulators, the inspectors. And most importantly, I had something they didn't. My own signed agreement with Monarch Properties, our biggest competitor in the state, signed 2 weeks ago, quietly, off the record, with full executive authority to build out their new luxury division, the very market I had built for Graham and Blake. Victor thought he was pushing me out. What he didn't realize was that I had already moved the chessboard while he was still choosing which piece to play. I drove straight to Monarch's corporate office downtown. My parking spot was already waiting. My name was already on the welcome screen in the lobby. My new office was 3 floors higher than Victor's. By noon, I had a team of 6 ready to roll. By 3, I had the first of many phone calls scheduled with clients who'd made it clear over dinner, drinks, and late-night strategy calls that they were loyal to me, not the logo on the building. I leaned back in my new chair, took a slow sip of coffee, and smiled. It was time to burn them down, politely, professionally, and without leaving a single fingerprint. The first call I made wasn't to a client. It was to Marissa James, the city's top commercial real estate attorney and someone I had worked with quietly for years. Marissa didn't just write contracts, she designed traps inside them. Traps only I knew how to activate. Victor finally did it, I told her. She exhaled like she'd been expecting this call. And you're calling me because I need you to pull every file we worked on for Graham and Blake over the last 2 years. I'm invoking the conflict clause. Marissa let out a low whistle. You're serious? Dead serious. The conflict clause was something Victor had agreed to when we hired Marissa's firm. written in tiny, unassuming language deep in our engagement terms. It stated that if I, Naomi Carter, ever left Graham and Blake for any reason, I had the right to hire her firm on retainer, and Graham and Blake would have to waive conflict on all overlapping projects. Victor had signed it himself, smugly dismissing it as legal fluff designed to make me feel secure. Now, that clause gave me exclusive legal access to every client file Marissa's firm had touched for Graham and Blake, including the Parkside Towers redevelopment, the waterfront zoning dispute, and the Royce Group's high-rise acquisition, which was worth over $200 million. I'll get started, Marissa said quietly. Do you want me to notify them? No, I replied. Not yet. By Friday, the news started leaking. Word travels fast in this city, especially when you know whose ears to whisper into. I had coffee with David Lerner, the city's most respected real estate journalist. I told him just enough to spark his curiosity, but held back the headline he was desperate to print. You're not giving me much, he said, leaning forward. Not yet, I replied, but trust me, when it breaks, you'll have the exclusive. That's all he needed to hear. By Monday, I had my second weapon ready, the client loyalty files. Before Victor locked me out of the system, I'd exported 3 years' worth of data. Not company data, my personal CRM, built in a private system that IT never touched. Every call, every deal, every relationship, not just business details, but birthdays, anniversaries, preferences, family names, the kind of personal connection no new consultant could fake overnight. I started dialing. Mason Caldwell, CEO of Royce Group, answered on the second ring. I didn't waste time. Victor let me go. Silence, then a quiet, "You're kidding." Effective immediately, I confirmed. I'm with Monarch now. We're building a premium division. Mason sighed. Damn shame. You built that market. I'm not here to gloat, Mason. I'm here to offer you continuity. I know your plans, your headaches, your timelines. I want to carry them through, with better terms, tighter oversight, and full control. He didn't answer right away, but I heard the tension in his breath. I'll need to think about it. I understand, I replied. But think fast. You know what Victor's next move will be. I've seen the Nova Group's proposal. He's going to cut corners to juice the next 2 quarters. He swore under his breath. I'll have my team call you in the morning. 1 down, 27 to go. I worked the phones for 3 straight days. By Wednesday, 12 clients had requested transition meetings. By Friday, 4 had already signed letters of intent to follow me to Monarch, including Royce Group, which sent Victor's empire into quiet panic mode. Because here's the thing about real estate. Once you lose credibility, you don't get it back. By the end of the week, I started hearing whispers through the industry that Graham and Blake was scrambling, that Victor was livid, that Nicole couldn't answer basic client questions without deflecting to legal. Perfect. I gave it another 2 days before I sent the final blow, an anonymous tip to David Lerner. Monarch Properties launches new luxury division, poaches top clients from Graham and Blake. The headline hit every major real estate outlet by Monday morning. Victor's phone must have exploded that day. Mine certainly did. I didn't answer. Not yet. I was waiting for him to come to me, and I knew he would. By the time Monday afternoon rolled around, I wasn't surprised when Victor's name appeared on my phone. I let it ring until the last second before answering. Naomi, he breathed, not even attempting his usual corporate bravado. We need to talk. I smiled softly, almost wishing I could see his face. I thought we already did. He sighed. Not like this. You've made your point. Congratulations. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the city skyline. Victor, I haven't even started. He didn't respond right away, likely wrestling with whatever was left of his ego. Come in tomorrow. Let's settle this face to face. His breath caught. He hadn't expected that. If you want to meet, I continued, it'll be at the Monroe Club, noon, my terms. He muttered something under his breath, but I could hear the defeat in his voice. Fine. The Monroe Club was no accident. It was the most exclusive business club in the city, the kind of place Victor only pretended to be welcome at. I, on the other hand, had become a member months ago when I knew this war was inevitable. The next day, I walked in early, took the table with the full skyline view, and waited. Victor arrived looking nothing like the man who'd fired me a week ago. His usual tailored confidence was gone. replaced with something stiffer, more defensive. He didn't even bother with a handshake. We sat. I didn't offer him a drink. So, he started folding his arms. How much is Monarch paying you to burn this place to the ground? I laughed quietly. Victor, you already lit the match. I'm just making sure it burns evenly. He leaned in, lowering his voice. You're making a mistake. You know how this works. This industry turns on people like you eventually. I took my time, sipping my water. No, Victor, it turns on people like you, people who underestimate the value of relationships over numbers, people who forget that in this industry, trust is currency. He scoffed. You think those clients are going to stick with you forever? The moment you can't give them a better deal, they'll run back. I smiled, leaning forward. That's where you're wrong. They're not moving because of price. They're moving because they don't trust you anymore. You lied to them. You broke promises. You put short-term wins over long-term loyalty. He clenched his jaw, and for a moment I thought he might walk out. But he stayed. What do you want? He asked finally. There it was, the surrender. I slid a folder across the table, my final terms. You sell me your commercial division, Victor. Full exit. You keep residential. You keep your name. You keep your little army of yes men. But the commercial side? It's mine now. His eyes widened. You're insane. I shrugged. Maybe, but I'm not wrong. And let's be honest, you've never understood commercial. You're good at flipping condos to millionaires who'll never live in them. Leave the real work to someone who actually knows how to build legacy. He shook his head. You can't be serious. Oh, I'm serious. And before you say no, let me tell you what happens next if you refuse. I leaned in until he couldn't look away. I finish moving every client you have left. I call every contractor, every vendor, every inspector, and I tell them exactly how you do business now. I'll tell the entire industry that the Victor Blake they trusted is gone, replaced by a man willing to sell his reputation for a quarterly report. He swallowed hard, knowing full well I had the power to do just that, because I already had, quietly, without headlines, without lawsuits. I watched him deflate, inch by inch. I'll need time, he muttered, defeated. You've got 48 hours, I replied, standing. He didn't move. He didn't argue. He just sat there, staring at the folder, knowing deep down that this was the end of the empire he thought he controlled. Victor didn't call the first day. He didn't call the second either, but I knew he would. He always did, right before the clock ran out. And sure enough, at 9:12 p.m., on the second night, my phone finally rang. I let it buzz twice before answering. It's done, he rasped. I felt the satisfaction creep up my spine like warm water filling a cold glass. He had folded. When can we finalize? I asked calmly. Tomorrow, noon, same club. He hung up without waiting for my reply. Typical Victor. He liked to end calls when he felt like he still had a shred of control. But the truth was, there wasn't a single piece of this he controlled anymore. The next morning, I arrived early again. This time, Marissa was with me, her briefcase already prepared. Victor showed up looking as if he hadn't slept since we last met. He slumped into the chair across from us without a word. Marissa slid the papers across the table like she'd done it 100 times before, which, knowing her, she probably had. Victor barely glanced through the pages before signing them one after another with mechanical precision. There was no fight left in him, not even a whisper of resistance. The last document slid toward him, the non-compete agreement. He paused, looked up, and for the first time in years, his voice cracked ever so slightly. You're gutting me, Naomi. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just looked him in the eye. No, Victor, I'm giving you a chance to walk away with your name still intact. You don't deserve it, but your father built that name. I won't be the one to kill it. He stared at me for a long moment, then signed the final page. It was done. 12 years of sweat and sacrifice, gone in 8 strokes of a pen. Marissa stood, packing up the documents. You'll get your copies by close of business today, she said coldly, without even acknowledging his presence. Victor didn't stand. He just sat there, breathing shallow, looking like he'd aged 10 years in the last 2 weeks. I leaned in one last time. Take your win, Victor. Retire quietly. You're lucky I let you walk away with anything at all. He flinched, but I didn't wait for him to recover. I walked out, Marissa close behind me. By sunset, the press release was ready. Monarch Properties acquires commercial division of Graham and Blake Real Estate Group, Naomi Carter, named president of Monarch Commercial. The story hit every major publication by morning. I spent the day taking calls from vendors, partners, and clients. One by one, they poured in. By nightfall, we had secured every account that once belonged to Victor, and that's when the next move landed in my inbox. An email from Nicole Patterson. Subject: Let's talk. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen, knowing exactly what this meant. She was jumping ship. Of course she was. The minute Victor's ship started sinking, she had nowhere else to run. I didn't open it, not yet, because I already knew what tomorrow would bring. And it was going to be even more delicious than I had imagined. The next morning, I showed up early again, but not at the club this time. I walked straight into my office, set my coffee down, and finally opened Nicole's email. Her message was as predictable as the sunrise: polite, submissive, carefully worded to sound like she had nothing to do with what happened. I've always respected your leadership. I was just following Victor's orders. I hope there's no bad blood. Would love to discuss any potential openings on your team. You know my capabilities. I closed the email without replying. I knew her capabilities all right: betrayal, sabotage, and opportunism. She'd watched me get pushed out like trash. She'd smiled while it happened. And now that the game had flipped, she wanted to sit on my side of the board. I almost pitied her. Almost. By noon, she called. By 1 p.m., she showed up at Monarch's reception, requesting to speak to me. She waited there for 45 minutes because I told my assistant to let her sweat. When I finally waved her in, she walked into my office like nothing had happened, like we were old friends picking up right where we left off. Naomi, she beamed, sitting down without being invited. You look amazing. Congratulations on the acquisition. I mean it. You've always been such a powerhouse. Honestly, I admire the way you handled everything. I leaned back, crossing my arms, letting her talk, letting her dig her own grave with every word. I've been thinking, she continued, leaning in like she was offering me some priceless favor. Now that you've got the whole commercial division, I could help you scale it. You know I have the boardroom experience too. I held up my hand, silencing her. Nicole, I interrupted, keeping my voice cold and razor sharp. You're not here to help me. You're here because Victor is finished, and you're hoping I'm foolish enough to let you slither onto my team after you helped bury me. Her face twitched, but she tried to recover with a nervous laugh. Come on, Naomi, that's not fair. Fair? I cut her off again, leaning in this time. You stood at my door smiling while Victor had me escorted out. You played your part perfectly. You wanted my job, Nicole, and now you've got it, at a company that's collapsing. Her fake confidence crumbled into panic. Look, I made mistakes, but you and I both know this industry's small. You don't want enemies. I smiled slowly. Oh, Nicole, you stopped being my enemy the second you made yourself irrelevant. She blinked, stunned silent for the first time since she walked in. I'm not going to waste a second of my time cleaning up your reputation. You built that mess yourself. She tried to speak again, but I wasn't done. And just so we're clear, if I ever see your name tied to any of my clients again, I will bury you publicly. You'll never work in this city again. Do I make myself clear? Her mouth opened, closed. Then finally, she nodded. Good, I whispered. Now get out of my office. She stood slowly, red-faced, and turned toward the door. And Nicole? I called after her. She stopped, shoulders tensed. You were never good enough to replace me. She left without another word. By sunset, I made another quiet phone call to David Lerner, the journalist who'd been following the entire story. By morning, his latest headline dropped: The Fall of Graham and Blake, How One Woman Took Back an Empire Built on Betrayal. The story went viral within hours. I didn't answer Victor's calls. I didn't return Nicole's desperate LinkedIn messages. I didn't need to, because the city had already chosen sides. And this time, they chose me. By the end of that week, Monarch's commercial division was booked out for 6 months straight. Developers, corporations, private equity, every name that once hung on Victor's wall now filled my team's pipeline. We didn't just take over, we rewrote the rules. We introduced client-first contracts with lifetime service guarantees. We launched exclusive tenant retention programs. We built custom zoning consultation teams for every major project. And while Victor's name still sat on that old, crumbling office downtown, his phone stopped ringing. I heard through back channels that he tried to sell the residential division, but no serious buyer would touch it, not after the press ripped his credibility to shreds. One by one, his agents left. First the juniors, then the veterans. By month 3, Victor Blake was out of the industry completely. Word on the street was he'd left town, headed somewhere down south to lick his wounds in private. Nicole tried floating around smaller firms, but no one touched her either. The industry was small after all, and her name had already been whispered into every executive ear that mattered. I could have stopped there. I could have closed the chapter and moved on. But I didn't, because I knew something Victor didn't. I knew his father's legacy still mattered to the city. The man who built Graham and Blake with honor before Victor turned it into a joke. And I knew that if someone didn't reclaim that name, it would vanish in disgrace. So I made one more move. I quietly approached Victor's father's oldest friend, Samuel Graham, the other half of the company's namesake. I laid out the truth, all of it. What Victor had done, what I had done, why I refused to let that legacy rot. It didn't take much convincing. Samuel signed over the Graham and Blake trademark to me for $1, on one condition, that I restore it with integrity. So I did. I relaunched the brand under Monarch's umbrella, not as a rival firm, but as a foundation, offering scholarships, mentorships, and career placements for young women in real estate. I turned the ashes of betrayal into something bigger than Victor ever dreamed of. And when I stood on the stage 6 months later accepting the City Leadership Award, I saw the faces of every partner, client, and colleague who had stood by me, not because of power, not because of leverage, but because I never betrayed who I was. I paused at the microphone, looking out at the hundreds gathered, and I said only one thing. To anyone who's ever been told they were replaceable, let me remind you, you were never building their company. You were building your own worth, and no one can ever take that from you. The applause was deafening. As I stepped off the stage, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not revenge, not triumph, but peace. Because in the end, I hadn't destroyed Victor. He'd destroyed himself. I had simply refused to go down with him.